Principal of National College, Jayanagar. I request Dr. B. Suresh Sir, HOD of History Department, to escort the dignitaries on the stage. Thank you. Let's get started with the program by an invocation song by Professor Indra Bai ma'am.
ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ, ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ, ಎನ್ನ ನಾಲಿಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪ್ಪು ಬಾರದೆ, ಹೇ ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಲೋಲಲೋಚನೆ ತಾಯಿ ನಿರುತ ನಂಬಿದೆ, ನಿನ್ನ ಲೋಲಲೋಚನೆ ತಾಯಿ ನಿರುತ ನಂಬಿದೆ, ನಿನ್ನ ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಎನ್ನ ನಾಲಿಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪ್ಪು ಬಾರದೆ, ಹೇ ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಅಕ್ಷರಕ್ಷರ ವಿವೇಕವಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕುಕ್ಷಿಯೋಳೀರೇಳು ಲೋಕವಾ, ಅಕ್ಷರಕ್ಷರ ವಿವೇಕವಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕುಕ್ಷಿಯೋಳೀರೇಳು ಲೋಕವಾ. ಸಾಕ್ಷಾತ್ ರೂಪದಿಂದ ಒಲಿದು ರಕ್ಷಿಸು ತಾಯಿ, ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಎನ್ನ ನಾಲಿಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪ್ಪು ಬಾರದೆ, ಹೇ ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಶೃಂಗಾರಪುರ ನಿಲೇವಾಸಿನಿ ದೇವಿ ಸಂಗೀತ ಗಾನ ವಿಲಾಸಿನಿ, ಶೃಂಗಾರಪುರ ನಿಲೇವಾಸಿನಿ ದೇವಿ ಸಂಗೀತ ಗಾನ ವಿಲಾಸಿನಿ. ಮಂಗಳಗಾತ್ರಳೆ ತಾಯಿ ಬಳಿರೆ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ ರಾಣಿ, ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಎನ್ನ ನಾಲಿಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪ್ಪು ಬಾರದೆ, ಹೇ ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಸರ್ವಾಲಂಕಾರದಯ ಮೂರುತಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಚರಣವ ಸ್ತುತಿಸುವೆ ಕೀರುತಿ. ಗುರುಮೂರ್ತಿ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ್ನ ಸ್ಮರಿಸುವೆ, ಗುರುಮೂರ್ತಿ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ್ನ ಸ್ಮರಿಸುವೆ, ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಎನ್ನ ನಾಲಿಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತಪ್ಪು ಬಾರದೆ, ಹೇ ಪಾಲಿಸೆನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದು ಶಾರದೆ. ಶಾರದೆ ಶಾರದೆ ಶಾರದೆ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದ.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. C. Vijayalakshmi ma'am, Principal of National College, Jayanagar, to welcome and introduce the guest speaker of the day.
A warm good morning to the dignitaries and the dais, faculty members and my dear students. Today we are all here for a guest lecture and an interactive session on the colonialism of the Indian mind. Still we are talking about colonialism. We became independent in 1947. For almost 2 centuries, we were colonized by the British. Still, we are clinging on to the same old word. Why? Before 2 centuries, they came and colonized us. They came in the name of business, but they settled here because of the resources that we had at that point of time. They not only colonized us geographically, but politically, linguistically, culturally, in every aspect of our life, they have influenced us. With that influence, we became very inferior and we started adapting their language, their culture. And now also we sidelined our language, which is where our country is very rich in diversity, be it in the name of languages, culturally, and many more. But the question comes here, where is our identity? Where are we heading? Are we just the extensions of Europeans? Don't we have any identity? Yes. So now we have to just question ourselves, where are we heading? We have totally forgotten our culture. We are forgetting the next generations, we don't know what to give by, means the Western, people are very much inclined towards Western culture. If you ask a child about Halloween, he will be ready to say, what exactly is it? But if you ask about Yugadi, no one knows about it. They just know how to celebrate it. So, we have to question ourselves about our country, how to just know, create our own identity, and the world map matters a lot to us. So, to give his insights and ideas about the colonialism of the Indian mind, so we have with us today Sankrant Sanu. He is an entrepreneur, writer, and researcher based in Seattle and Gurgaon. He is the founder and CEO of Garuda Prakashan, a publication house focused on Indian narratives and languages. And he is also the author of The English Medium Myth and co-authored Invading the Sacred, a critique of Hinduism studies in US academia. Sankrant is a graduate of IIT Kanpur and the University of Texas at Austin and holds 6 international technology patents. Give him a big round of applause. And one more twist here is, Sir worked in Microsoft Corporation for a few years and then left the IT career only to focus on personal growth in the yoga traditions, and now he is working towards a plural, sustainable world. He is an advocate again for indigenous cultures and languages with his book titled The English Medium Myth. Sankrant is a graduate of IIT Kanpur, as it was already mentioned, and now he is also a faculty for the art of living. So he is a multi-talented person. You just name any field, he knows about it. Okay, give him a big round of applause. We are very glad to have you with us today, sir, on this occasion. We also have Mr. Naveen with us. So he is the one who coordinated this program. We really very happy to have you with us today, sir. I also welcome Dr. Suresh, head of the Department of History. I congratulate him for conducting such a nice program on today. I also welcome all the faculty members and all the students to take active participation, and you are supposed to just raise the questions. If you have any question, please don't hesitate. Just ask questions and get your questions answered. Have a great learning. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to welcome you to this function, ma'am. Now I request Dr. B. Suresh sir, HOD of History Department, to propose formal vote of thanks.
ಗುಡ್ ಮಾರ್ನಿಂಗ್. ಟುಡೇ ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ವಿಭಾಗದಿಂದ ನಾವೊಂದು ಗೆಸ್ಟ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರನ್ನು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರು ಮತ್ತು ಕಾರ್ಯದರ್ಶಿಗಳಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಬಿಂದು ಸ್ಪೀಕರಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸಂತೋಷ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಒಪ್ಪಿಗೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಿದಂತಹ ನಮ್ಮ ಪದವಿ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾದಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವಿಜಯ್ ಸನು ಅವರು ಸಹ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಮತ್ತೋರ್ವ ಆದಂತಹ ನವೀನ್ ಸರ್ ಅವರು ಸಹ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಮುಖ್ಯಸ್ಥರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ನೆಚ್ಚಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ BA, BSc, BCom, BCA ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಸಹ ತುಂಬ ಹೃದಯದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ತಿಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಆಯೋಜನೆ ಮಾಡತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ನಮ್ಮ ಆಸಿಫ್ರವರು ಮತ್ತು ರುದ್ರೇಶ್ ಅವರು ಸಹ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
On behalf of everyone, I would like to thank Dr. B. Suresh sir for organizing this program. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Sankrant Sanu sir to talk about the colonialism of Indian mind. Sir, please.
You can actually
I will
put it
download.
full screen.
I will download.
Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It's so wonderful to be here at this college. Madam Principal was just telling me a little bit about the very glorious history of this college. So I feel very honored to be here and be a little bit a part of the history. The topic we are talking about is the colonialism of the Indian mind. I'm going to go into different aspects of what does it mean to be colonized. The basic problem that we have right now is that we have assumed and internalized the idea that the West is superior. All of us at some level have internalized this idea. Even if we have not internalized it from the point of view of culture directly, definitely in math and science we have said, okay, we got math from them, we got science from them, they are the ones who taught us how to be modernity comes from them. So all these ideas we have. So that remains a very big part of our colonial mind setup. Of course, then the second part is the colonialism of the state. What does that mean? That the institutions of the state, the executive, the judiciary, and we'll go into this in detail, are all also continuation of the colonial institutions. Not much has changed from when the British set them up. And then there is colonialism of thought and academia that we will touch upon. There's the colonialism of language. Most of the time I've actually been giving this talk in Hindi. Unfortunately, I don't know Kannada, which I would love to learn. But once I learn Kannada, I would love to give this talk in Kannada. So please excuse me for that. And do people understand a little bit of Hindi? No, not so much. Okay. Because I might have a few slides in Hindi, but I'll speak in English. But I will definitely take upon myself to learn Kannada also. And then there is a little time we will spend on colonize and some ideas around that. So I'll give you a very simple test to understand what is it that the West actually gave us and what is it that we actually taught the West. So if you take a very simple number, let's say this number I've written 3, 4, 5, 6. You know Roman numerals? Everybody knows Roman numerals? Now, how will we write this number in Roman numerals? Can somebody write it? How would we write this number in Roman numerals? You'll do something like M, 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 C, D, L, V, I, something like that, right? That will be a number in Roman numerals. Now, what if I asked you to square that number, but only in Roman numerals, only using Roman numerals? Can you multiply that number by itself? Okay, once you write it as M, 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 C, D, L, V, I, can you multiply that number by yourself? Is there any method to multiply? What you'll find is there is no method to multiply. The Europeans did not know how to multiply. They could not actually deal with very large numbers. They didn't even conceive of numbers much beyond 10,000. Okay, so if somebody doesn't really have a system for multiplication and they cannot conceive of very large numbers, can they imagine that the earth is many billion years old? They cannot imagine that. So they actually have can they imagine the distance between the earth and the sun, which is millions and billions of miles? You cannot do that, right? So they didn't have mathematics, they didn't know mathematical operations, and therefore they also had very little or very rudimentary science. So how did this get to them, right? A lot of times we say, oh, India invented zero. But zero is simply one part of the very big mathematical tradition that we have, right? So from zero, we actually created place value notation. I know I'm talking to art students, so we won't go into a lot deep into math, but very simple. Place value notation means when I write 2, 3, it means 2 is number of tens, 3 is number of units, right? If I write 5, 4, 3, it means 5 hundreds, 4 tens, and 3 units. This is how we write numbers. So they did not have that place value notation. We created place value notation. And without place value notation, you cannot have all of the multiplication, division, all the complex mathematical operations. So obviously we didn't create place value notation just to write it. We created it, all the systems, all the mechanisms by which you do mathematics, right? All of that were created by Indians. You know, so there's Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya, all these mathematicians that are involved in this. So not only then we create all of the arithmetic that you study in school, but then all of the algebra that you study in school, which is wrongly attributed to the Arabs and to Al-Khwarizmi and other people, because the Arabs themselves actually say that they got the mathematics from India. The Al-Khwarizmi book is Hisab al-Hind. It says the mathematics of India. So the Arabs are very comfortable recognizing that they are simply taking the mathematics from India and transcribing it, right? But when the Europeans got it, they got it from the Arabs, so they started calling it Arabic numerals or Arabic numbers. But the Arabs call these same numbers Hind-se. They call the same number Hind-se. They don't call them Arabic numbers. So not only did we get mathematics, not only did we get arithmetic, we got algebra, which was Avyakta Bij Ganit. That is where algebra comes from. And then trigonometry, which is the study of the ratios of a triangle. Actually, we used chords of a circle. And also the foundations of calculus, which comes from the Madhava school, Kerala school of calculus from Madhavacharya. So all of these aspects were transmitted from India to Europe. They learned mathematics from us, and then they learned physics, astronomy, many of these fields they learned. And later part of our colonization, Macaulay came and told us that one European textbook is worth more than the entire set of books that exist in India, all the libraries that exist in India. That he said that is one thing, but the tragedy is when we accepted it. We accepted that is true, that the West brought us science, the West brought us mathematics, the West taught us, all of these things that make up modernity. But as you look into it, even whether you're talking about planetary rotation, about the fact that the earth goes around the sun, all of these ideas actually come from India. In fact, it's very interesting. Galileo uses the exact same analogy that is there in Aryabhatta for the relative motion of the earth and the sun. He uses the analogy that as a ship is moving, it looks like the land is moving, but actually the ship is moving. So he uses the exact same analogy that is already present in Aryabhatta, and he gives the same example. So we won't go into a lot of detail on how this transmission happened. There is one book we published from my publication house, Garuda Prakashan, called The Imperishable Seed, How Hindu Mathematics Changed the World. So that goes into a lot of details on many of these topics. So if we go forward, I spent most of my life in the West. I spent most of my life in America, over 35 years. And when somebody asked me there, I was actually on a date, and the person asked me, what brought you to America? And I said, I came to study you. I came to study the natives. I came here for the anthropology of the natives. And which is very true, because that was my inspiration, impulse when I went to the US. I was like, they sent so many people to study us, but we haven't sent our people to study them. So it is about time we start to study them. Because unless we start to study them on our own terms, we won't know. Maybe they are superior, or maybe they are not. But unless we study, how will we know? Right now we've just accepted it, that is the way we have to go about the world. That is the way of the world. So if I look at a very high level picture, I'll have 2 or 3 slides on what is the problem with the model that the West has brought into the world. One symptom of this is there is this great Pacific garbage patch. It has 1.6 million square kilometers of garbage in the Pacific Ocean, and it has become an island of plastic. This is what we are doing to the planet through a mechanism which simply says we have to produce more and more. I have a definition of GDP. GDP is the rate of turning the earth into garbage. Okay, so the faster we turn the earth into garbage, the more developed we call ourselves. And this is the model that we got from the West, that we have to keep on producing and consuming more and more things. So this is a unsustainable model. It does not work. Another stark statistic is that if it is a society that we have to emulate, if the Western society is what we have to copy, then we need to look at what are their social indicators. So in North America in particular, has the highest rate of mental illness anywhere in the world. Almost 1/5 of Americans are under psychiatric medication. Now, if 1/5 of Americans are taking psychiatric medication, is that an example that we want to copy? Is that a society we should say, no, we should be like that, right? But somehow internally we've assumed that they are very advanced and we are very backward, and we have to progress by being more and more like that society. Similarly, this is a very interesting graphic on breakdown of the traditional family. This graph on the left side, it goes from 0 to about 70%, shows the number of children born outside of marriage. The number of children born outside of marriage. And if you look at the rightmost, this is Iceland. This is about 70% of children are now born outside of marriage. Okay, and this also has jumped up a lot. The blue solid line is the data from 1980, and the additional hollow line, hollow triangle, rectangle, is from 2007. So even in the last 30-40 years, a lot of that has changed. So in some countries, a majority of the children, including in UK, are being born outside of marriage. What happens as a result is that there is no stability in the home. There is really no father figure oftentimes who's responsible for the family. And there is also a lot of revolving door relationships where somebody comes in, somebody else comes in. And so the child does not find any stability in the family. So is this a society we want to emulate? Is this our example that we want to go to? So we have to first start to ask, what is it? And to decolonize, one of the steps to decolonize is the colonialism of the mind makes us internally assume that our goal is to be like them, right? Advancement is to be like the West. Humko America banna hai. We have to become America. This is how we will become developed. This is how we will become advanced. But if we actually look at the state of Western society in general, it is not a society we want to emulate. In fact, today our society is way more advanced than the society in the West. And this can be shown through data, right? So we have to look at what is it that we have which is of value. And also I'm not recommending from a decolonial perspective that everything we have is good, everything they have is bad, nothing like that. I'm saying to decolonize, we have to have an independent thought. We have to have a thought which is able to see what is it that they have of value, what is it that we have of value, and we are able to make good judgment on it rather than just copying whatever that they have in a blind fashion. So a lot of times the question is asked, but we got independence in 1947. Why are we speaking about this now? Aren't we already independent? Well, I'll give you a couple of examples. If you look at the executive, this is a recent incident where there was a cricket match in Faridabad, and there were a number of people, hundreds of people who had legitimate tickets, but there was some problem and they were not let in. So they started agitating and saying something. Then the police officer did a lathi charge on them, injured a lot of people. And later he was interviewed and he said the people needed to be taught discipline. Now the question is, Have we elected the state to teach us discipline? Is this the job of the state to fix people? Is that why we elect the representative? Is that why the government is to function, that their job is to fix people? This is the way of a colonial state. A colonial state thinks that its job is to fix society, its job is to fix people. And for at least 150 years, we have been engaged in this business of fixing Indians and fixing society. We have to teach them this, we have to teach them discipline, Indians are a big problem, right? So this whole attitude is there that we have to fix the people. The second branch of government is the judiciary, which is called the law of the land. Now, the laws in England themselves were created based on common law. Common law means that based on their customs and traditions over hundreds of years. Based on their way of life and customs and traditions over hundreds of years, the law was created. How is the Indian law created? Is it based on the customs and traditions of India over hundreds of years? No, it is not. We rejected all of that. We said that we completely imported a British penal code, an Indian penal code, and then we have this, I'll talk about the constitution. So all of these we just imported and imposed upon the people without really asking if that is in consonance with the traditions and culture of the country. So it is something that was imposed in a colonial fashion. If you look at the Supreme Court, for instance, this is the only place which is the little motto in the bottom, Yato Dharmastoto Jaya, is the only place where it is, you'll find Devanagari in the Supreme Court, because you're not allowed to practice in any Indian language in the Supreme Court. Right? You cannot practice in Kannada, you cannot practice in Tamil, you cannot practice in Hindi, you can only practice in the Supreme Court in English. And why is this? This is because over 90% of our constitution is simply a copy of the Government of India Government of India Act of 1935, which was an act of British Parliament. So the British had set up that there will be a federal court with a chief justice, and all we did in 1947 was there was a nameplate which said federal court, we removed it and we said Supreme Court. That was the only change that happened in 1947 as far as the institutions of government goes. So the current state in all its branches is a continuation of the colonial state. There is no discontinuity, but there is a big discontinuity between ancient Indian states and the colonial state. Right? So we are still following the British India Act. And in the Supreme Court, they said the person who can be appointed who has been at least 5 years a judge of a high court in British India or a barrister of England or Northern Ireland. So the entire set of judges that were appointed had to have been basically trained in the British court, in the British law, in British jurisprudence. And those were the judges that were appointed, and those were the starting point of Indian judges in 1947, which continues. After the collegiate system, the judges themselves appoint other judges, and the pedigree of all these judges is finally British. Right? This is where they come from. And if you look at the very last line here, it says all proceedings in the federal court shall be in the English language. So why is the Supreme Court today using only English? Because the British India Act of 1935 said this. Right? This is why, and we have not changed a word of it. So when this Government of India Act was passed in 1935 by the British Parliament, there was a big protest against it in India by the Indian National Congress. In fact, Jawaharlal Nehru called this act a charter of slavery. They were very much opposed to this British India Act. And the question is, how then did this British India Act actually become our constitution? We are told often who is said to have written our constitution? B.R. Ambedkar. Right? Everybody says B.R. Ambedkar wrote the constitution. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee, but chairman is mostly a titular role. Who actually does the work? Some person who is assigned to draft the constitution. This person was Sir Banigal Narsingh Rao, who drafted the Indian constitution. Who was he? He was in the ICS, which is the IAS service, so he was a bureaucrat of the British Empire. He had been knighted by the British Empire for loyalty to the British in 1938, so that's why he got Sir with his thing. And he was the constitutional advisor to the Constitutional Assembly, and he was the one who prepared the draft of the constitution. Now, what is a IAS officer, ICS officer going to do who has served all his life to the British? He's going to take whatever the British had created and make that into the Indian constitution, which is what he did. In fact, my analysis shows that over 90% of the Indian constitution is a copy of the British India Act. All they did was add a few fundamental rights section, some directive principle that nobody follows, and then that is more or less every change that they did. How the executive functions, how the judiciary functions, how the legislature is elected, how the legislation more or less is a complete copy of the British India Act. And of course, B.R. Ambedkar himself said that my friends tell me that I have made the constitution, but I'm quite prepared to say I shall be the first person to burn it out. I do not want it. It does not suit anybody. So this is Ambedkar himself on the Constitution of India. Of course, today, I'm in the city of Bangalore, so we have to talk a little about digital colonization, the next wave that is coming. All of the program, I was in China, it was very interesting. They don't use Google for search. They don't use Facebook for social media. They have their own apps. They have their own search apps. They have their own WeChat. In fact, most of the apps are Google, Facebook are banned in China. You cannot even access those apps in China. They created their own complete ecosystem of all the software we are using. And while we are completely dependent in social media, in our search engines, on our email, all of it, we are completely dependent on the US. What does that mean? They have access. I have friends who work in Google, and in the very beginning when Gmail was being set up, the FBI came in and they said we need to have hooks into the Gmail program. So every Gmail that is being sent is read through the filters and is accessed by the US government whenever they need to access it, right? Which means that all our ministers and politicians and services that are using those emails are very vulnerable to digital colonization as well. So we have not really been trend setters in this. Name one, we say India is a software power, but name one global app that has come from India and is spread all over the world that everybody is using, one global consumer app. There is not even one, right? All the software we are using is software from that has been given to us. So this is a little excerpt for my presentation on language. One other big aspect of colonization is the colonization of language. And my book is called The English Medium Myth. And here I'm talking about a few of the myths of English that we have internalized. For instance, one of the myths that we have internalized is that English is the way to progress, and to become rich, to become developed, we have to use English. And all of that kind of scientific work is done in English. These are 4 logos. On the left side, you will see the University of Tokyo. On the top right, you have Technion from Israel. Bottom left, you have German university teaching robotics. And then you have a French institute. All of these use their own languages for higher education up to the PhD level. So all of their scientific work, University of Tokyo has one of the top medicine programs in the world. They use Japanese up to the PhD level. All their research is in Japanese. Similarly, in Germany, all their research work, PhD level programs are in German. In France, they are in French. So this is how actually they proceed. The other aspect of colonialism in India is that we've made English a language of status. We assume that if you want to target rich people, you can only put ads in English, you only advertise in English, you talk in English. But this is not true of all of the other countries of the world. This is, when I was in China, I took this photo at the railway station. And in the railway station, there is an ad for, what car is that? Do you recognize it? Audi. It's an Audi car, right? So it's a big luxury car. But if you look at the advertisement, it's completely in Chinese, right? Now, when you go out from the Bangalore airport, you find a lot of billboards, but none of them are in Kannada. Right, all of those billboards you will find is only in English, that is advertising iPhone, luxury goods, all of these things. But this is not how other countries work. In other countries, top paying jobs, highest professional jobs are all in their own language. This is an interesting example. On the left is actually my daughter when we were on a China trip, and we went to a very high-end 5-star restaurant. She wanted to eat a particular dish which is very famous from China. And this restaurant catered to a lot of tourists. But from the wait staff, as you see, they are very fancy. They're all dressed in uniforms, the wait staff. From the wait staff to the manager of that restaurant, nobody spoke a word of English. This is in the capital of China, in Beijing, where they are catering to tourists. Now in India, if you go out on the road and you find a roadside dhaba, even there the menu will be in English. Right? Because somehow it has come into our mind that this is what progress means, this is what development means, but this is not how the world works. This is 11 years ago, this photo. Even then they had smartphones, so she's communicating to them using smartphones. They give the smartphone, you type in English, and you press a button, they understand it in Chinese, they take your order. Right? Now it's even more advanced. Now I was in Japan in October. In Japan, all the menus are basically QR code. You do the QR code, you can choose the language you want the menu in. If you want it in Spanish, in English, in French, you'll get the menu. You give the order in the kitchen, they will get the order in Japanese, and they bring your order. Right? So there is absolutely no need for English, for even catering to foreign tourists, for anything like that. And this is how these societies operate. They don't operate by saying, we are going to subvert our whole language and culture and cater to the tourist language, to run our society. Since my field is computers, I was always very interested in seeing how people are learning computers. So I went to a library in Japan, and in the library in Japan, on the left side is a networking book, TCP/IP networking, but all of the content, as you see on the page, is in Japanese. Right? On the right side is a C++ programming book. All of the ways that they learn programming, it's entirely using Japanese. Only very few keywords like cout, int, main, very few keywords are in using ASCII Roman script. But those small keywords anybody can easily learn. The pedagogy, the method that they learn, all of that uses Japanese, their own language. And this is an example of a book. What is this book about? What is this language? Can anyone guess? This is Chinese language, and the book is called A Bite of Python. And this is written by an Indian, Swaroop CH, in English, because the Indians don't write in Indian languages. So the Indian wrote the book in English in 2003, and the Chinese translated it to Chinese to learn Python programming, which is now a big programming language that people are using. So even when we are writing, we say we have to only write in English, and then all of the DeepSeek, they don't speak a word of English. They come from villages in China. There's an interview with this woman. She said, she tells her story about coming from a village in China and then learning computer science, and now she is running one of the biggest artificial intelligence in China, completely using Chinese as their medium of learning. The other question I am often asked is, what about, when I often give this talk in IIMs, and job kaise milega? Job in an MNC if we don't speak English. Now the question is, in English, what is that left? MNC, what is that? Toyota. Where is that from? Japanese. Okay, Toyota is Japanese. And on the right side, what's it? Where is that from? Korea, right? And then this is LG, and then there is, what is the bottom right? Hyundai, right? Hyundai is from South Korea. So, the CEO of Samsung, the chief executive of Samsung, has done his MBA in Korean. So, they are not learning English to run these multinational companies. But when the Samsung company goes to Japan, they offer jobs in what language? In Japanese. So Samsung work in Korean, their executive management works in Korean. The jobs they Japanese, the jobs Thai language, they give in French language. But when they come to India, what language do they interview and give jobs in? English. The multinational company, or is it because of it's our problem? It has no country that they are in. But we tell the multinational company, no, educated in India means knowing English. Right? So to interview people, you have to interview in English. Right? So this is the mindset that we have cultivated and carried on. This is not how all of the people, which is countries in GDP per capita and bottom 20 countries in GDP per capita. Each of the top 20 countries in GDP per capita work and learn tongue. And in the bottom 20, 19 out of the 20 are using some colonial language to study. So the poorest countries use English. Right? The worst of countries use some language which is not their mother tongue. They use English, Spanish, Portuguese, French. One of the colonial countries, so many history professors are there, they will know. So wherever the colonial powers went, they imposed their language and culture. And those countries that have not freed themselves from that colonial yoke are the poorest countries in the world. And all of the countries that are actually rich and progressed and developed are using their own language. And again, people say, no, science is done in English only. This is a small table, 2012, 14, 15, 16, of Nobel Prize winners in science from Japan. Almost every year, they are having a Nobel Prize in science. And when was the last Nobel Prize from India in science? Decades and decades ago. And even those people, like C.V. Raman and all these people, actually studied in their mother tongue. So there are in fact no Nobel Prize winners who are not studying the science in their mother tongue, This was a study done by the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, where they went and studied Telugu medium students in Andhra Pradesh and English medium students in Andhra Pradesh. So they tested students in 8th grade in math and science. And they found that the Telugu medium students had a much better understanding and much better results in math and science than the English medium students. Right? And despite this data, the state of Andhra Pradesh now has turned its entire set of schools into English medium. I was in Chittoor recently giving a talk, and I'm talking in English, and most of these children in English medium schools have a very hard time understanding English. It's like I told you tomorrow that your children will study in Chinese medium. What would it be like if tomorrow all of our children are forced to study in Chinese medium? It would be incomprehensible, right? And this is exactly what it is like for the village students. It is some alien language that is imposed upon them. And every scientific study shows that children learn and develop best in their mother tongue. You know, here also many students might have come from Kannada medium. And then there is a difficulty in, switching from Kannada to English medium. But there is actually no need to switch, as I've shown. All over the world, countries are using their own language to study to the highest level. So a lot of this colonialism of language actually comes from government policy. It comes from the fact that the government itself runs all the top institutes in English. I went to IIT Kanpur, it's only in English. All of the IITs only teach in English engineering. If you go to IIM to do an MBA, it is only in English. Right? If you go to the highest judicial colleges that you are learning law colleges, they are only in English. The court itself, the Karnataka High Court functions only in English. The Supreme Court functions only in English. So the colonial setup was never dismantled. We continued the colonial setup, and as a result, we continued the colonialism of language, which keeps millions of Indians, billions of Indians back. It does not allow the talent of the 90% of Indians who are not comfortable with English to develop. So we act like a much smaller country. In fact, I was also very surprised when I was working on my book, and this is something for our academic profession people to note, that I found very few studies that showed the discrimination that students face due to English. There's very few social studies, there is very few ethnology studies, there's very few studies that are talking about the discrimination that students face due to English. But you will find millions and millions of papers that are talking about caste discrimination. Why? Because that is the topic that the colonial power started in India. Right? And we are still in all of academia following exactly the topics that were taught to us by them, and saying this is your Indian society problem. So, it's the caste cow curry view of Indian society. Indian society is beset with social problems. We are oppressive towards women. We are oppressive towards lower class. I am not saying India does not have problems. I am saying that we only study those problems from a colonial gaze. And we only look at the problems that the colonial people had, all the colonizers had told us are our problems. For instance, we do not look or study English systematically as a problem that has been introduced due to colonialism. So this is one of our other aspects of colonialism, of thought. So oftentimes I am asked, but India has so many languages, how would it work in India? Most people don't know that China also has 300 languages. China has 300 languages, though they have made Mandarin the official language. But I think for India, the European Union model works very well. Do you know what the population of Europe is? What is the population of Europe? It's about 75 crores, 75 to 80 crores. And that means that we are almost twice as large as all of Europe, as the continent of Europe in population. In fact, we are larger than all other continents. We are larger than North America, we are larger than South America, we are larger than all of Africa, and we are larger than Europe. In fact, we are larger than North and South America combined in population. So India is a continent. It is a country and it is also a continent. So there is no point imposing one language on all of India. Rather, we should, at the central level, support all Indian languages. The Karnataka High Court should be operating in Kannada also. And all the bank, all the central government facilities should be available in Kannada. My income tax return, I should be able to file in Kannada. There is no reason why that is not true. The European Union, if you look at this table, supports all 20 plus languages of the Union as official languages. All of those languages are official languages, and you can call the European Union in any of those languages. If I am sitting in Poland, I can call the European Union in Polish if I have a problem with them. I can email them in any of the languages. And now with technology, this problem is much simpler. It might not have been possible in 1947, 1948, but now with technology, it is much simpler. And our goal should be that every Indian citizen is able to study to the highest level in their own language, is able to interact with the government at the highest level in their own language, and we also remove the discrimination in private corporate sectors against Indian languages, so that somebody can interview in Kannada when they are in Bangalore, for instance. There is no reason why that should not be the case. So the question then is why decolonize? We can only really decolonize if we realize that we have something better to offer. For instance, if we accept that the colonial powers were better than us in all ways, then we should just copy them. What is there to decolonize about? Right? We should just copy them. So the first question is to really study and say what is it that they are better in and what is it that we are better in. And the second thing is colonialism prevents us from access to our own experience. What does that mean? We often study all our PhD papers, all our journals. 90+% of them are just regurgitating additional original material or existing material and keeping on reproducing it. For instance, caste discrimination is talked about very high in India. Everybody is studying it in social science academia. I asked a group of students, I think this was in IIM Lucknow, I asked them, raise the hands if you've personally been discriminated against by a Brahmin. I'm not a Brahmin, but I just asked this question. If you've personally experienced it, only one person out of 120 people put their hand up, right? And even their story was very, it was like, oh, some pujari was rude to them or something like that. So what we have done is we are not using our own experience. We are using just something that has been told to us without looking at our own experience of going about life and what we've actually encountered, right? And that is the colonial gaze. And what that gaze does is, it does not allow us to understand our own problems. Again, I'm not saying we don't have problems, but we need to understand problems in our own terms. Because only then will we create solutions that actually work. Because oftentimes we keep creating or imposing solutions on society, and those solutions are worse than the problems they are intended to solve. And so they create more problems the more we impose those solutions. So this is very important. This is the reason to decolonize, so that we are able to make good choices on how we take our society and our country forward. And this is a book I'm working on now. It's called Third Republic. This is a QR code. You can pre-order it if you like. And it questions how, if we say that the current state is a colonial state, what then should be the right model of a state? Right? So this is a question we need to ask. And this book is attempting to ask the question, not to have this full set of answers, because that will happen when a lot of people engage in that question. So what is the aim for understanding what is the role of the state? We have to ask, what is the aim of human existence? Right? Because the state is a human institution, and it must be some objective of the state to serve the purpose of human existence. In our tradition, we have said that there are 4 purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And those are the set of strivings of human existence. Right? Dharma is what is right, what is righteousness, what is law, what is duty, what is the right action that I have to take. Right? Artha means the pursuit of wealth, prosperity, which is considered very legitimate in our tradition. It's a normal human pursuit. We want to have a good job, we want to have a good salary, we want to make money. This is legitimate pursuit. Material success, we want to have a nice house, nice car. It is completely fine in the Indian tradition. And then the pursuit of kama, which is all kinds of aesthetic pleasure, of beauty, of art, of film, of dance, of music, of love. All of that is part of kama. And then moksha means liberation or freedom from all of those. So a state which is organized to foster human existence must be a state that establishes dharma, which is right order, which will not have corruption, because corruption is not right action, where the weak will be protected, because that is one of the laws of dharma, where people can pursue artha. You don't look down upon wealth creation and wealth acquisition, where people are free to pursue kama without restrictions, and putting people into very, very restrictive categories. And people are free. This is not something the state has to do in terms of kama or moksha. It is something which is a freedom which is given to every individual, and the state is saying that we will make sure that you have the freedom to pursue what you wish to pursue. And there's two ideas that I have proposed in this, which is how do we make the change. One is idea of right to legislate as citizens. I'm calling it RTL. Because right now what happens is, even when we elect a government, whether in the center or the state, it's a very blunt instrument. We elect we favor some party, or we elect that party, but there is nothing that guarantees that when that party comes in the power, they will actually follow what we've asked them to follow or what we've elected them for. They can do whatever they want, right? And then the only action we can do is after 5 years we can change them. But the citizens by themselves do not have any control over what laws and rules are created. For instance, in Washington state, where I was living for 30 years in the US, we have something called ballot initiatives. So if you collect a certain number of signatures, then a proposition comes on the ballot. You can vote yes or no. Like for instance, in Washington state, we voted that no new taxes will be imposed on us. Now the state legislature is bound by this vote, and they cannot put any taxes on us more than what is already existing. So we as people should have the right to create laws. And now again, with technology, with Aadhaar identification, with the internet, this is much easier to do today than it was when the republic was started. So it is time to reimagine the republic. Another thought or idea of an institution I have is citizen feedback survey for government performance as a statutory level. Like today, if you book on a travel website, you book a hotel and you stay there, next day you will get a survey form. How was your experience, right? Today, if you book a flight and you use that flight, the airline will send you a survey. How was your experience with the flight? What can we improve? Now, how many government offices have done this for you? Where you go to a government office and the next day somebody calls you and says, sir, were you treated well? Did somebody ask you for any bribe? Was your work done in a timely way? Were you taken care of? Nobody does that. But they tell us that they are public servants. If they are public servants, why are they not serving us? If they are public servants, why are they not being measured on the level of service that they are providing to us? Right? Right now they have become our bosses rather than public servants. So we need to restore the balance of power where there is a systematic way in which feedback is collected for each district, ward, for each police station, and people who are responsible, their confidential report or their performance, their promotion, their salary is dependent on how well they are serving the public. It is a big component of that. If we did that, will the attitude of the government officer have to change? Yes. If their salary was dependent on whether they treated you with courtesy, if they did the proper job, will their attitude change? Right? Right now there is no accountability. They have no accountability. We are the only people who have to go and petition them and beseech them and, sir, kaam kar do, do this, do that. Right? But they are not accountable to us in any way, which is not really democratic. So the idea is for a unified survey, citizen unified survey for humanistic, accountable leadership. This is one of the other proposals. So I'll open up for questions. This is the company Garuda Prakashan. You can scan that QR code, follow us on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, whatever you choose. You can also follow me personally on X and LinkedIn, and you can follow on Instagram Garuda Life, which is our website. And if people have any questions, I'll be happy to take questions also. Questions about language, about the Indian state. Don't worry, you can ask with confidence, and if somebody wants to speak in Kannada, maybe somebody else can translate also. Do we think some of these are workable ideas? How do we bring about a change? Are we in a colonial state?
Sir, I have a question.
Uh,
Do you think that present we are saying Americans, no? They're real Americans?
Well, that's a different question. Of course, America is also colonized. It's colonized land where the Europeans went and they colonized the Native Americans, right? But by itself, that doesn't help us in our problem, right? I mean, it's a good question, but it's not really helpful. Yeah.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್.
Namaste.
ಸರ್ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು.
Okay, can somebody translate? Yeah. Yeah.
ವಸಾಹತುಶಾಹಿ ಆಳ್ವಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ಭಾರತದ ಸ್ಥಳೀಯ ಭಾಷೆಗಳಿಗಾಗಿರೋ ಪ್ರಭಾವ ಏನು ಸರ್? ವಸಾಹತುಶಾಹಿ ಆಳ್ವಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ಭಾರತದ ಸ್ಥಳೀಯ ಭಾಷೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರಭಾವ ಬೀರಿದೆ?
So he wants to understand what is the impact of the bureaucratic what do you say, management on the local languages, local regional languages kind of thing.
Well, if you look at the country level bureaucracy, the IAS for instance, most of the IAS in its origin came from the English speaking Indian class. So the bureaucracy is a big force of colonization in India. So the bureaucracy comes from that same elite English class, and they have been very reluctant and resistant to actually make substantial changes that reduces the power of English in our lives. So they are an obstacle for the most part.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask, I am from BA, sir.
आवाज आपकी आ नहीं रही है, थोड़ी पास.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
थोड़ा पास में पकड़ो. हाँ.
Good morning, sir. I am from BA.
Okay.
So my question is that how, as you said, the languages, when you write an email, like we have to choose the languages. But if they don't, like if they say that you have to type in this language only, so how we should cope up with that?
Absolutely. So there's two parts to it. One is that the government, there is government and there is private, right? In government, my proposal is that the government should accept any language, because the government is to serve all the citizens of India. The central government, it has to serve people from Kerala and people from Karnataka and people from Tamil Nadu and people from Assam and people from Punjab. All of those are citizens of India. So the government should allow them to write in their own language, right? And with automatic translation or with having right staff, they can respond in the proper language. So that is important. Of course, today with AI, even you can write in any language, right? You can write in whatever language is comfortable, and you tell AI it will write very nice English for you, or it will write very nice Hindi, whatever is needed, right? So I think the technology can make this problem much better, going forward. Any questions from the back? Okay, this is your moment.
I'm Dr. Saraswati, sir. So we had very good university before, like Takshashila University or Nalanda University. They were teaching more than 200 languages to the students, like space studies, logic, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and also astrology, like that. So can we bring the same old glory in the modern context? Because we are following the Western kind of education system now. Can you answer?
Yes, absolutely. I think it is possible to bring back, I would say not necessarily, we don't necessarily have to bring back the old. What we have to do is, we have to look at the principles on which it was created and established. This is why I bring up the aim of Purusharth. For instance, if you take the Western model, you have this, hierarchy of needs, right? So, hierarchy of needs saying you must have first material thing, then you have this thing, and then you have self-actualization. But in our tradition, I met this Jain Digambar Muni, Acharya Vidyasagarji, in Madhya Pradesh. And the Jain Munis, they don't own anything. They don't even own clothes. They are without clothes. And they walk barefoot. So they are self-actualized. They are at the highest point of the pyramid of needs. So if we think it only happens after you get material success, after this, our tradition shows that that's not true. It's the opposite, right? There are so many sant and people that thousands will bow down to who have no money. So our society is not organized on that level. So to say how do we get back Nalanda, Takshashila, in fact I visited the ruins of Nalanda recently, and they had these big platforms that most likely were used for meditation in the center of the university. So we have to have an academia which is established on our principles, which is yoga and dhyan and meditation, and also what is the purpose of human existence. Right? We say the purpose of human existence is moksha. Right? So all of our, if you look at all of our arts, our culture is organized around how do we move energy upwards? How do we become more aware? How do we become more conscious? The aim of existence is not how do I acquire as much as I possibly can and destroy the planet as fast as I can. Right? So we have to look at it the fundamental way, and then we build on top of those principles that we have.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. I'm Dr. Nagachampa from Department of Economics. I have one question. Yes, I do agree what you explained. There is a colonialism in every nook and corner of the society. What measures do you suggest to make changes in this Indian mindset?
So I think there's 2 or 3 suggestions I already had. One big part of colonialism is that it robs our own experience. So especially as learned academics and people who are guiding people, one suggestion I have is keep coming back to our own experience. Most of what we write in the PhDs, in the journals, all of that, is just like some cut and paste from somewhere, citation from somewhere, but it never goes to our own experience. Like, what is my experience in the household? What is my experience in the market? How are the people around me actually interacting with each other? Because I have an article, Dharma, society based on Dharma versus law. If you look at it, most of I had this discussion with my daughter when she was studying in a US school. I think she was maybe 12 years old. And she said, I said, can you have a society without law? And she said, no, everything will fall apart. But I said, most of our relations are not governed by law. Your friendships in school are not governed by law. All of the things that are happening when you're talking to people, if you're nice or you're not nice is not being governed by law. Right? So many of our relations are actually governed by notions of what is right, what is honorable. Somebody will think badly of me if I do this, if I do that. Right? So it is governed not through an imposed legal structure, but through negotiated ways of going about the world. So what we have to do again and again in all of our subjects is say, let's just set aside the Western theory books for a moment and say, okay, how is the economy actually working, right? They say, okay, this much money is available, and all those formulas are there, and so on and so forth. But does that actually work? What happens if you actually tweak that around, right? How are people actually operating? Like, for instance, informal economy, right? India has a big informal economy, they say. But what is the informal economy? My definition is people who don't want to deal with the colonial state are in the informal economy, because the colonial state is too hard to deal with, right? The colonial state operates in English, then I will have to go and file some corporate forms and deal with the bureaucrat to register my company and then get some GST number and all of that. It's so much of a burden on me that I would much rather operate in the informal economy. So when people are saying, no, we have to move people to the formal economy, that's putting the cart before the horse. We have to fix the problem that makes people not be able to go to the formal economy, right? Which we haven't fixed. We just say we have to move it. So we have to look at it from first principles. Like in our society, how is the sabzi wala operating? How is this cart person who's selling, pani puri working? All of that. And then we look at our relations, our family relations. I'll give you an example. This is related to Jati also because I was very interested in that topic. I'm not from a Brahmin caste or something. So, but in my family, one of my cousins, she fell in love with a Brahmin boy in her workplace. Now, if caste is a hierarchy, then the Brahmin family should have opposed that and my family should have said this is great because we are rising up the hierarchy. But the maximum resistance was coming from the conservative part of our family saying, no, we cannot do this, right? So that means that it cannot be, if it's a hierarchy, then everybody would want to rise up the hierarchy. But that's not how society is actually working, right? So we have to discard these ideas that have been told to us and say, okay, how is the sambandha relationships in society actually working? How are they governed? And then we can do original work, original scholarship. And I think that's the way we decolonize.
Any questions?
Okay, final one maybe.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Gautam from BA. Can we truly decolonize our minds while still using English as a primary academic language?
No, it's a very good question, and the answer is actually no. In fact, most of the times I have given this talk in Hindi, which is the language that I know, because I think we have to move towards working in our own languages. And English was meant to be a bridge language for only 10 years when the constitution was started. And then it kept getting extended, and in the emergency, it was made a permanent feature of Indian society. So we have to really go back, and I think with the technology, it will be easier. I think next time, maybe 4 or 5 years from now, if I come and give this talk, I can speak in Hindi and you will understand, you will hear Kannada, because the audio system itself will do the translation. Right, so and this is already happening. This is not a fantasy or science fiction. I was in Japan. I was listening to a stage play, concert that was happening. And in my ear, I had these headphones that were iPods, AirPods, Apple AirPods. And AirPods now already have a translate feature. So I was hearing Hindi actually in my earphone, but they were talking in Japanese. Right, so I think with the advancement in technology, this will be much easier, but we really need to start doing work in our own languages to decolonize. It's very important. Yes.
With your permission, I want to ask one question.
Sure. And there's one in the back here also. Yeah. Unke saath wali bhi, that girl, the one in red also had raised her hand.
Good afternoon, sir. Is it possible to regain our cultural identity in the modern world?
It is not only possible, it is necessary. In fact, you'll be very surprised. In California, millions of people are actually adopting our culture. They are doing yoga, they are waking up in the morning, doing pranayam, they are chanting Om. There is a Bhakti Fest that happens in California, which is an all-white American fest mostly, and they have full Bhakti Fest. They are singing Govinda Jai Jai, and they are singing Ganesha, rhythm. So our culture is already so powerful that it has an ability to attract people from all over the world, right? But if we ourselves don't think it is of value, then of course nobody else will care for it also. So we have to start with our own learning, our own respect for culture. I actually go to this Sri Ravi Shankar ashram, not very far from here. And I teach the Art of Living course, Sudarshan Kriya. So I urge everybody to find some way to access the tradition, whether it is starting to do puja at home in the morning, or having some, as I said, Art of Living is a wonderful course. You can learn that, or some other practice, your own guru, right? So getting deeper into your own culture, you will create an understanding of the necessity of this culture. Because people in the West, because most of my life I live, they are actually hungry for the knowledge that we bring, are hungry for the cultural knowledge that we have, because they are all kind of disrooted people. A professor in Harvard will not know that you don't, have, milk with some other thing that somebody in the village in India will know. What not to eat with what, what doesn't work, what is too hot for you, and what is, so all of those knowledge of food, of diet, of society is much deeper ingrained in us, in our mothers and grandmothers, than they have in the scientists that are out there. So yes, absolutely, the culture can and it must be revitalized, because it is the necessity for the world to find that way. Yeah. You had a question? Okay.
Anyone else? So I wanted to ask you a question. So ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೇ ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ನೀವು ಓದ್ತಿರೋಂಥ ಪಠ್ಯಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳೇನಿದೆ ಇವಾಗ, ನೀವು ಬಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಬಿ ಸಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಬೇರೆ ಇನ್ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರು ಕೋರ್ಸ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಕೂಡ BSc BCom ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಆ ಪಠ್ಯಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಓದಿದ್ರೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಮಲ್ಲೇ ಇರ್ತೀರಾ, ಆದರೆ ಕನ್ನಡ ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ನಾವು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅದರದ್ದು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅದು ನೀವು ಓದಿ ಅಂತ ಅಂದಾಗ ನಿಮಗೆ ಆ ಕನ್ನಡ ಪಠ್ಯಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನ ಓದಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ, ಅಥವಾ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಹೌದು, ಆದರೆ ನಿಮಗೊಂದು ಕನ್ನಡ ಗೈಡ್ ಥರ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ನಾವು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಓದ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಆವಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅದು ನಿಜ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ, ಅಥವಾ ಕನ್ನಡ ಪ್ರಯೋಜನ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡ ಪಠ್ಯಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು ಕೊಟ್ಟರು ಅದರಿಂದ ಪ್ರಯೋಜನ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತಾ? ಇದು ಜನರಲ್ ಕ್ವಶನು, ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ತಪ್ಪು ಸರಿ ಅನ್ನೋದೇನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನಾವು ಅಂಥದ್ದೊಂದು ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ನ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಸಂಕ್ರಾಂತ್ ಸರ್ ಅವರಿಂದ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಆಗಿ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಅದನ್ನು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಅವರ ಭವಿಷ್ಯದ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲೇ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇದನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಇರೋ ಕನ್ನಡ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಮ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಿಮ್ಗೊಂದು ಕನ್ನಡ ಗೈಡ್ ಥರ ನಾವು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ, ನೀವು ಓದ್ತಿರೋಂಥ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಗಳನ್ನ, ನೀವು ಓದ್ತಿರೋಂಥ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಜನ್ರೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಆಗೋ ಹಾಗೆ, ಜನ್ರೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಆಗೋ ಹಾಗೆ ನಾವೇನಾದರೂ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗದು ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇತ್ತು. ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ಹೌದು, ಕರೆಕ್ಟು, ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು ಸರಿ. ಸೈನ್ಸು ನೀವು ಇವಾಗ BSc ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ BSc ಇರೋಂಥ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ಗಳೇನಿದೆಯೋ ಅದು, ಕಾಮರ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ ಅಕೌಂಟೆನ್ಸಿ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಸ್ಟಡೀಸ್ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಆ ಥರದ್ದನ್ನು ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ BA ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಜಿಯೋಗ್ರಫಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಜಿಯಾಲಜಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಏನೇದು ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಇವಾಗ ಸದ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಬುಕ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಸೂಕ್ತ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತಾ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಲೆಗೆ ಅದು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೋಗುತ್ತಾ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಓದ್ತಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ತಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಂಕ್ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನ್ನ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಇದು ನನ್ನ ಓನ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್, ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರ್ಗೆ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತಾ ನಿಮಗೆ? ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಇದಾಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಅದು ಡೌಟಾ ಇನ್ನೂ ಅದು ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತಾ
ಸರ್? ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ರೈಟ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರ್ಯಾಚ್ ನೀವು ಯಾವ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜಲ್ಲಿ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಕೇಟ್ ಮತ್ತು ಕಾಂಪ್ರಿಹೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊತೀರಾ, ಆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಯುಸ್ಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅದು ಇನ್ನೂ ಟಾಪ್ ನಾಚ್ ಆಗಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ನೀವು ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಯಾವ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್, ಫಾರ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲೇ ನಿಮಗೆ ಎಜುಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರ, ಫೈನ್, ನೀವು ಆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜಲ್ಲೇ ಓದ್ತೀರ. ಬಟ್ ನಾವು ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಮಲ್ಟಿಲಿಂಗ್ವಲ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಸೊ ನೀವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೇ ಎಜುಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಹಾನೆಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ನನಗನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕಾಂಪ್ರಿಹೆನ್ಸಿವ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ಗೆ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರು ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಲ್ಲ, ಅಂದರೆ ಇವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರಲ್ಲ ಎಲ್ಲರದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಬಾಲಭಾಷೆಯಾಗಿ ಕನ್ನಡನೇ ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದು ನಾವು ಅಲ್ವಾ, ತಾಯಿ ಭಾಷೆಯಾಗಿ ಬಾಲಭಾಷೆಯಾಗಿ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಮತ್ತೆ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ, ಅಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ನಾನು ಮತ್ತೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ವಾಲಂಟಿಯರ್ಸ್ನ ನಾನು ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಅಂದರೆ ಇನ್ನೇನಕ್ಕೂ ಅಲ್ಲ, ದುಡ್ಡು ಕಾಸು ಏನಿಲ್ಲ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ. ಆಯಿತಾ, ಈ ಥರ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ನ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ನಾವು ತೋರಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ. ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಓದಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಫೀಡ್ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ಅದು ನಮಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬರೀ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಹುಡುಗರೇ ಅಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಇಡೀ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಜನ ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ನಮಗೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನವ್ರಿಗಿಂತನೂ ನಾವು ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಯ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ, ಬೇರೆ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೋಯ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ ಇದರ ತೊಂದರೆಗಳು ಜಾಸ್ತಿನೇ ಇರೋದು. ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಮ್ ತೊಂದರೆಗಳು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಮೇ ಓದಿರೋದು, ಸೊ ಆದರೆ ಕನ್ನಡಿಗ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಆ ಒಂದು ಸಪೋರ್ಟನ್ನು ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದಾ ನಾನು? ಸರಿ, ನಾನು ಮುಂದೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ದಿವಸ ಬಂದು ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಸರ್ ಮೂಲಕ ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ.
ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಅವರ ಫ್ಯೂಚರ್ ಏನು? ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಈಗ ಕಲಿತಾರೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೇ ಕಲಿತಾರೆ, ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೇ ಕಲ್ತ್ವಿ. ನಾಳೆ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ ಹೋಗಿ ಫೇಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಆಸ್ಕ್ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಇನ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ. ನಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಹಿಂದಿ ಕೂಡ ನಮಗೆ ಈಗ ಒಂಥರ ಇಂಪೋಸಿಂಗ್. ಎಲ್ಲಾದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲೋದ್ರೂ ಹಿಂದಿ. ನಾವು ಬಂದರೆ ರೀಜನಲ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್, ಈಗ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದರೂ ಹಿಂದಿ ಬ್ಯಾನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಇದೆ, ತಮಿಳ್ನಾಡಿಗೆ ಹೋದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೂ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮ್ ಇದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮದು ಸೌತ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಬಂದಾಗ ನಾವು ಒಂದೇ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಮದರ್ ಟಂಗ್ನೇ ನಂಬ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಮೊದಲು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ನೀವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟರು ಕೂಡ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅದು ಫ್ಯೂಚರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗಬೇಕಲ್ಲ, ನಾಳೆ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ಹೇಗೆ. ದುಡಿಮೆ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ
ಇದು ಖಂಡಿತ ನೀವು ಹೇಳೋದು ನಿಜನೇ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನಾನು ದಿನ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆಯಿಂದ ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ ತನಕ ನಾನು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲೇ ಮಾತಾಡೋದು ನನ್ನ ಆಫೀಸಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು ಖಂಡಿತ ನಿಜನೇ. ಫ್ಯೂಚರ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ಸೊ ಇದನ್ನು ಸರ್ ಕೂಡ ಅದನ್ನು ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನ ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಅ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಖಂಡಿತ ನಾವು ಓದಲೇಬೇಕು. ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಅ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಆಗಿ ಅಥವಾ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಕೇಷನ್ಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಆಗಲಿ, ನಮಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಆಫೀಸಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಆಗಲಿ, ಅದು ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಕಂಪನೀಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲೇ ತೊಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಜನ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋಂಥ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಮಾತಾಡಲೇಬೇಕು, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಕಲೀಲೇಬೇಕು, ಅದರಲ್ಲೇನೂ ಇದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಇವಾಗ ನನ್ನನ್ನೇ ನಾನು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ನಾನು ಒಬ್ಬ BCom ಗ್ರ್ಯಾಜುಯೇಟು, ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ MBA ಮಾಡಿದೆ, IIM ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಯಿತು ನಂದು. ಆದ್ರೂ ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅದು ನನಗೆ ಅರ್ಥನೇ ಆಗಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಿಂಪಲಾಗಿ ನಾನು ನೆನ್ನೆ ಇದೇ ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್ ನನ್ನ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಜೊತೆ ನಾನು ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಅವಳು ನನ್ನದು ಕೇಳಿದೆ, ಆಸ್ಮಾಸಿಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನಿದೆ ನಿನ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ, ನಿಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆಯಾ, ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದೆಯಾ ನಿಮಗೆ, ಆಸ್ಮಾಸಿಸ್ ಡಿಫ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದೆಯಾ ಅಂದೆ. ಅವಳು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀನೆಲ್ಲೋ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ವೆರಿ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸೈನ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋದು, ಆಸ್ಮಾಸಿಸ್ ಡಿಫ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಅಂತ. ಸರ್ there is a small discussion going on, so I just wanted to, very much related to the topic. ಸೊ ಆಸ್ಮಾಸಿಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನೇ ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಆ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟನ್ನ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಟರ್ಮಿನಾಲಜಿ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು. ನಾನು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ನಾವು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತಿರೋದು ಅದೇನೇ. ಈವನ್ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಇವಾಗ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀವೋ ಅದ್ರ ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಮೂಲವಾದ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಪದವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ಕಲಿಬೇಕು, ಇದನ್ನು ಕಲಿಬೇಕು. ಇಲ್ಲಾಂದರೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗೋದು ತುಂಬ ಕಷ್ಟ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅದು ಪ್ರೂವನ್ ಇದಷ್ಟೇ, ಅದು ಸ್ಟಡೀಸ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋದು ಖಂಡಿತ ನಿಜ. ಕೆಲಸ ಸಿಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಇವಾಗ ಸರ್ ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಮಲ್ಟಿನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಂಪ್ನೀಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಂದು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ತಮಿಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ತೆಲುಗುಲಿ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡೋದು ದೂರದ ಮಾತು. ಅದು ಇನ್ನೂ 10-12 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಡಿಯುತ್ತೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತನಕ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ನಾವು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಆದರೂ ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋದು ಕನ್ನಡ, ಬಟ್ ಬೇರೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲೂ ಸರ್ ಮೂಲಕ ತಮಿಳಲ್ಲಿ ತೆಲುಗುಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಈ ಇನಿಷಿಯೇಟಿವ್ಸ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ತೊಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎರಡೂ ಕಲಿತ್ರೆ ತುಂಬ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದು. ಹೌದು, ಜನ್ಸೀಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಎರಡೇ ಯಾಕೆ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅರ್ಥಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಅಷ್ಟೇ, ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಗೂಗಲ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡೋ ಥರ ನಾವು ಖಂಡಿತ ನಾವು ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೋಗಲ್ಲ. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರನೇ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನೇ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಇಂಡಿಯನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸು, ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿರೋಂಥ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ನ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನು ಈ ಕರಿಕ್ಯುಲಮ್ನ ಬಿಲ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ವಿ. ನಮಗೂ ಹೊಸದು, ನಮಗೂ ಕಷ್ಟನೇ. ಸೊ ನಾವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರನೇ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ, ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಹತ್ರ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ, ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ ಹತ್ರ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫೀಡ್ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ನ ಕೇಳಿ ತೊಗೋತೀವಿ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಖಂಡಿತ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಯುವರ್ ಫೀಡ್ಬ್ಯಾಕ್. ಖಂಡಿತ.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಆಲ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಆಲ್ಸೋ ನವೀನ್ ಸರ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಫೋಟೋ ತಗೋಣ. ಬನ್ನಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಂದ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬನ್ನಿ, ಫೋಟೋ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ಅಂದ. ಬನ್ನಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬನ್ನಿರಿ, ಬಾಯ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬನ್ನಿರಪ್ಪ, ಫೋಟೋ ತಗೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದು. ಓನ್ಲಿ BA ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಂದು ಸಾಕು. BA ಆಸಿಫ್.